Home run Howie, he's known for hitting no matter where he's at in the lineup.
I gave it an A-, and I was doing it relative to the rest of this draft class. In this division, Jahad Campbell, A+, Andrew Makuba, A+, Ty Robinson, I thought he had a chance to go late day 2. He's a plug-and-play guy in the middle of that defense. Of course, they got a first-round talent in the 6th round in Kyle McCord. And if any team can develop these offensive tackles, it's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Jeff Stoutland in this Eagles team, I expect him to be either a starting guard or starting tackle at some point by the end of his rookie contract, and obviously doesn't have to get thrown to the Wolves right away. I love the Jahad Campbell pick, man. You already had the best linebacker duo probably in the NFL last year.
Well, I mean, to recap this draft, man, just beautiful. I love that they gave us A-. You know, of course, in hindsight, of course, there's always some things that could be done better. But I do think the NFC East overall had a very strong draft class. They were, brought in, very strong draft classes. The Cowboys, I would say, definitely solid. Giants, definitely some good picks and pickups. Carter can't be argued with, as well as the Commanders, man. Great additions to add on top of what they added in free agency in the trade market. So to focus back in on the Philadelphia Eagles as defending now Super Bowl champions, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, man, I love what they did. But before we get into the draft class and the particular individuals, let's look at some hallmarks. Just this is draft class, man. Number one, I would say the key difference is in how the Eagles are drafting and why, because it's very important. It's the reason behind the secret sauce, why they've been able to have so much success over the past 20 plus years. All the other teams in the division need multiple immediate impact players, whereas the Eagles, we're drafting for depth. We're drafting for future immediacy. It may not be, this year, it may not be in the immediate onset of the season, but we're not expecting these guys to come in and play, contribute to a heavy degree immediately. We're able to, draft, develop, instruct, slowly, behind the scenes, pull them along and bring them and gather them together. So, you look at, the Giants, you look at the Cowboys, look at the Washington Commanders. They're drafting for primarily need in the immediate, future. Even if they don't need, with the tackle, I believe they have one guy that drafted. They can develop him slowly along, but the question is, will they get greedy and trying to press him into service? And those are things that, bad franchises, struggling franchises that aren't accustomed to success, they have to, get used to being perennial champions, being perennial contenders. Fresh coming off of, an NFC championship appearance where we, trounced them, and we showed the difference between a annual contender and one who's just an upstart. These are the things that matter, and, how the Eagles draft. We have a process that has been, a recipe that's been tested and tried that we love to stick to. We love to build along the lines. We love to draft for depth. We don't like to, draft for immediate need. And these are things that, teams, it's so hard for them to hold back, keep themselves from doing. And why? Because it's just the proper way to construct a team. And the Giants, they've been reaching for years. They famously, paid Daniel Jones when they should have paid, Saquon. And shouldn't have paid him, for 1 year. But again, their failings are winnings, because we only lost one game last year in the division. That was to the Commanders, and that questionable in and of itself, because we lost because of Jalen Hurts being knocked out of the contest. We were able to avenge that game later on. The Cowboys as well. They drafted well, but the follow through on other levels has fell through. So team construction is not just one thing. It's not just one ideology. It's not just a culmination of a couple things. Each bit and bob has to fall into place and has to be purposely done. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels. They're trying to recreate something that didn't even take them into the precipice of where they want to be in the Great Wall of Dallas. And it's not a bad place to build, but they weren't able to do so on the other side of the ball. So I mean, it's confounding, it's confusing, but like I said, as a divisional rival, I love it. All right, number 2, the benefit of the above approach is twofold. So number 1, you can alleviate the pressure on these players to be the man and start from day one. They can come in and learn, develop, be brought along at a reasonable pace, and actually mature and be ready when they are ripe fruit. So, we look at the first couple picks we made. Even the guy we drafted, first, he might contend with, a guy in legacy, in Trotter Jr., who might, displace him, from the starting lineup. We don't expect those guys, even if he is a top 10, talent in this draft, to come in and start immediately. We can, slide him in on our own pace and expect him to be a key contributor as a reserve coming off the bench, but not as a starter immediately. You know what I'm saying? Last year was the anomaly in Quinyon Mitchell grabbing the starting job out of the gate, but that's because he showed the acumen, he showed the readiness, and it doesn't hurt training against Devonta Smith and AJ Brown every day in training camp to get you ready, prepare you for that role. He's already faced the best when he's going out there on Sundays. But still, they made sure that he was ready. It wasn't just like a given that he was going to start. It could have been the corner who departed for the Vikings, Isaiah Rodgers. Could have been him. But you look at, guys opposite, Dallas. Their offensive tackle last year, and Tyler Guyton pressed in the service and had to leave that deployment because he wasn't ready, and we knew that. Eagles had a chance to draft him. Even if they were drafting him, it would have been laying in front of him. It would have been him proving that he was ready as a right guard before we would have been placing him there. That's the benefit of having a program like that, that like ours, that is built to slowly bring those players along so that we don't, them, and it's the opposite end of that spectrum. Like I said, the Giants wide receiver, I forget his name, Malik Neighbors. He was ready, but still some of the finer points, he could have used a veteran presence there, and that doesn't happen in Philly because we have guys, AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, who are gonna make sure that those guys under them are ready or mentally prepared, and they're going to coach those guys up. And have also that environment where the reciprocity, where the older talent brings the younger talent along. All right, second fold part of that, that there are depth pieces first, so they have a higher chance of being successful when they're ready to be called upon and not pressed in the service come hell or high water, sink or swim, and just be thrown to the wolves from the get-go. Like I said, you see plenty of players ruined by that. And I'm not saying we're perfect enough to stay on record. We've done that as well in the past, but we learned over the past 2 decades or so. Think how many players' careers were ruined by not sitting them and having them prematurely play before they were given the mental tools to even deal with the job and the rigors of the tasks that are expected of them. Poor team building and construction, if you want to look at why teams like insert Dallas and the Giants and up until recently the Commanders, up to last year, haven't been successful. You look at shit like that, man. You don't want to do that to to your players ideally, and it's been something that's been it's because head coaches and GMs and they don't have an infinite time clock. They're on a and they have to make sure that they're playing for the now, but also looking to the future, but not delaying it too much. The days of drafting a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers or drafting a quarterback like Jordan Love and letting them sit, that's a huge luxury in today's NFL. Guys have to be brought along, and they might get at the most 2 years to sit. That's generous. A year, and then you got to be hitting the ground running. You know what I'm saying? We just happen to have Jalen Hurts fall into fortuitous circumstances, and he had the hunger, sitting behind Carson Wentz, and then things fell out. But anyways, let's look at the draft picks, going top to bottom from round 1 to round 6, where we ended up drafting our last player. So Jahad Campbell fell to us, top 10 talent, went 31st overall, and he's going to be able to come in, and he might start. he has the talent. But if Nakobe Dean was healthy, I don't know if they would have drafted him. I mean, they said, but there's so much jargon and stepping around different things. But even if, let's say, Kobe was there, that would put him in even more ideal situation. But his clone is already on the roster. The guy he can look to, he said his name out of his own mouth. Zach Bond, a player who has the same versatility, utility, can play him at starting inside linebacker, can play him at outside linebacker, can play him at edge rusher. So I mean, there's so many things he can do, but so many things he can improve upon. But I mean, the boy has the talent and skills. So we'll see how he comes along. But he most likely is going to be a key contributor in year one. Andrew Makuba, he could play a role. We'll have to see. But he could be our C.J. Gardner-Johnson replacement. Had 6 picks at Texas, stepping into the SEC this past year. And, slighter frame, 186 pounds. 6 foot, though. He could be, nickel corner. Ran a 4.45, I believe. So, he's got decent speed. If he beefs up, man, watch out. Can lay the wood. Good in coverage. Good all-around player. So, but again, he's not being pressed in the service. Sidney Brown most likely will be pushing for a starting job over him. He could grab it, but we have the supporting cast to make sure that if he's thrown in there, he needs to be smart and astute. He'll have the support that he needs. But very much a player that most likely Vic Fangio vouch for, loves, and will get in and get to work with. Ty Robinson, a guy who had good value at where he was drafted. 6'5", 288, good pass rush skills. So we'll have to see how he develops. But he has also that inside-outside versatility. He could be precedent dude on the edge, but since he's kind of like a tweener, 6'5", 288, he could be put on the edge, and it'd be a good defender there. We'll see. We're not expecting him to come in and be a Milton replacement. But like I said, with the rotation in place, he's not being keyed in on, and he's not going to be counted on to produce. So we have guys. He could be number 5 in the rotation right now, maybe number 6 behind Thomas Booker. So I love that we have that depth, and we can bring him along at our pace. Starting to catch the theme here. Mac Williams, same deal, 5'10", $191, could be at that slot corner. I think he ran a 4.41, but he could get some time on the outside. I see more as an inside corner, but he's got competition. He's got Ringo. He's got I'm forgetting Eli Ricks. So he's not being pressed into duty. So I love that, he will have the time to sit and develop, man. If he shows some skills, cool, but we're not dependent on this guy. Smile Munden, good value pick there, 6'2", 224. Seen as, could be a average starter, could develop into that, he's a backup. Guy was a former 5-star recruit, has the talent, just needs to put it together and to be more consistent. So, again, sit him in the linebacker room, and, man, used to be, the worst linebacker room, or the second worst, has, developed into one of the best because we have guys, who coach up these guys and, we identify talent, know what to do with. So I love the idea of Vic Fangio getting his hands on him and pushing him. Drew Kendall. We need a backup center. He's here. He could also be a guard. Has good physical dimensions. Looks like a smart player. Went to Boston College. So, again, depth piece. Develop him. Can be a key contributor as a backup. Kyle McCord. I think he threw for the most yards last year in the NCAA. So, maybe the FBS. But smart, intelligent guy. Seems still the top 150 player on a lot of analyst draft boards. Smart guy, and he can come in and be our number 3. Don't know if he. I think he probably sits as the emergency quarterback, but could be a future trade piece. Miles Hinton, talent, but rough around the edges. See what Stout can do. We get hands on him. So I love what someone said. We don't have to take risks. You don't have to draft a premium talent when you have a guy who can identify talent and develop them. At the very least, depth. I mean, if you're talking about hitting, starters, Jordan, Mailata. So Cameron Williams has more talent than him, more inconsistent, but young. I think he's only 20 years old, a junior coming out, so don't know why he came out, but that's works to our benefit if he can come in and be pliable, moldable, shapeable, coachable. And Jeff gets his hands on him, and he gets his kid to click it. Man. And then another value pick, Antoine Powell-Ryland. Good production, 25 sacks, but not, the most twitchy, not the most lengthy guy, 6'3", 258. So, I mean, decent size, though. Reminds me of Alex Hunt as far as his size. But I love his get-off. He has good get-off, so you can't teach that. Was worried. I mean, I was like, can he only do come out of a 3-point stance? But he can do 2 points as well as a standing. So, man, I'm excited to see what this guy can bring. If he can be, molded himself or be molded into that luxury 5th guy coming off the bench. Man, there's a lot of potential here. So, I mean, like, development and, depth are the 2 things I would say about this draft. I just love, and Mark said it's another beautiful chef's kiss piece of resistance draft by Howard Rosen, man. I'm so glad we have the guy in charge. But anyways, we'll get about her on that note. But what about you? What do you think about the draft? I know you didn't make it this far in the video, so it's all good. But man, I love. And I didn't over-research this one. Just let it, the draft come to me, as the board came to the Eagles, and just enjoying the value that they got out of this one. So anyways, we'll chunk this is officially get the fuck up out of here. But as always, it's fly, Eagles, fly, and let's motherfucking go.
Like, comment, share, and subscribe if you like.
Thanks for watching. Check me out at Cintron, Cintron Anime, Cintron Life, or Cintron Laughs, or other social media.